welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikita, and on this channel we focus on the inclusion of BIPOC stories, especially South Asian stories, both in literature and in real life. So you can expect a lot of book chats, book recommendations, as well as my podcast called Brown People Problems. Alright, so for today, let's talk about the 13 books that I read in the month of September, a lot of which were BIPOC authors as well. And actually this month was a really good reading month, so I am excited to share those with you. Alright, so the very first book that I finished in the month of September was Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. Now, this is the same author who wrote The Bodyguard, which I loved, and this was her newest one, which actually just came out earlier this year, or a couple months ago even. And I saw a couple people talk about it, but I didn't pick it up because I just wasn't sure if it was for me. And because the description doesn't do it justice, but then I saw a lot of people talk about it on YouTube and I decided to pick it up, and it was actually incredible. I gave it a 4.5 stars. If you enjoy, I guess, like women's fiction with a romance as a subplot, you would really enjoy this. If you like Catherine Center's The Bodyguard, you would actually really enjoy this. Hello Stranger follows our main female character, Sadie Montgomery, who is an aspiring artist. And there's this really big art competition coming up, which has the potential to skyrocket her career. And it also has a lot of like emotional connection to it because it's the one her mom had also been part of. And she really sees this competition as being, like really validating her worth as an artist. So just in the process of applying to this art competition, she ends up in an accident, and a result of which she loses her ability to recognize and see people's faces. Now, I know that sounds a little bit fantastical, but you can look it up. I looked it up when I was reading this book, and it's a real condition. But because of the head injury she received, she can see people, she can see everything, but when she sees people's faces, her brain is not able to organize them into normal features. They just look like a bunch of puzzled, like a bunch of pieces of puzzle that are misaligned. And it's a very real condition. And so that's the one that she ends up with. And the real kick in the butt here is that her form of art is portraits. So she paints people's faces for a living. And as you can imagine, that's really devastating. But I think as also I'm describing this, it's coming off as a very sad book, but it's actually not. It's hilarious. And Sadie is just so quirky, and she's so funny, and she's so resilient. So that's where our story starts, and then it unravels from there as there's a love interest in here as well. And as she figures out how she's going to do this thing, enter this art competition when she can't see people's faces. If you like the kind of trope where the main protagonist has a bit of a chaotic life, she's trying to figure things out, and her life is a bit of a mess, I think you would really enjoy this. She also does have a dog, so there's an animal in this as well, and their relationship is also really lovely. All in all, I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 4.5 stars, and I think everybody would love this. Alright, after that I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, finally, and I finished it in about 2 days, and that was me really stretching it because I didn't want it to end. If for some reason you haven't heard about this book, it is everywhere right now, but R.F. Kuang, the Yellowface is R.F. Kuang's first literary fiction. She's known for writing more fantasy, historical fiction, thrillers type of situation. But this is her first literary fiction, and I gotta say the hype is very real for this book. It is very real. This was easy 5 stars for me. And I am going to go back and reread this at some point because I flew through this book. This is a great book. So if you haven't heard of it, this book is really this first person narration of June Hayward. June and Athena Liu, they are friends from their master's program, and they're both writers. Athena's career takes off, and she's a Chinese American woman. Her career really takes off as an author, and she becomes super published, super famous, movie rights, all of that jazz. And unfortunately, she passes away in a very unfortunate accident, very unexpectedly. After which point, June, her supposed best friend, decides to steal Athena's manuscript and sell it as her own because she hasn't received the kind of literary fame she thought she would. And that's where the book starts off. It is such a bingeable, compulsive read. It does have an undertone of a thriller to it, especially towards the end, but the commentary, the cultural and the inherently like racist commentary in here, it is so well done. R.F. Kuang really nailed the microaggressions really well, the kinds of microaggressions that folks of color hear and experience all the time. And it's not just more interpersonal type of discrimination that you see, there's more systemic. So this book really kind of focuses on the publishing industry and the type of racism and discrimination that is inherent to the publishing industry. And I didn't know so much about that, but now I do. And this was just... it was great. It hits all the hot topics like racism, discrimination, appropriation, privilege, authenticity, systems of power, commodification, just everything that you can expect. It's very like political, but not in a sense where there are figures in power or like political systems in power. Like it's really just at the end of the day a story about two friends, one of which, a white woman, ends up stealing Chinese American woman's work and sells it as her own, and how the system supports that in a sense and makes it easy for her to carry that through. So I thought this was great, an easy 5 stars, and everyone I think would really, really appreciate it. All right, after that, I read Taste Like Shucker by Nisha Sharma. This is a sequel to Dating Dr. Dil, also by the same author. And I was really excited for this one because I surprisingly really enjoyed Dating Dr. Dil. I wasn't expecting much from it, but this is a sequel. It follows the other 2 friends in this friend group, and I believe there's also going to be a 3rd one. As you can expect, this is a rom-com about 2 American Indian young people who are, you know, a bit of enemies to lovers, and they find themselves coming together forcefully because of their friend's marriage, the characters from Dating Dr. Dil, and that's where things unravel from there. I gave this a solid 3 stars. I definitely thought Dating Dr. Dil was better in my opinion, but this wasn't bad. It's definitely a spicy romance. It was fun. I enjoyed the main characters, the plus size Indian American woman, so it was nice to see some of that like representation and diversification in body types. And it was good. It was fun. It was a fun time. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It's just how rom-coms go, and I thought it was fun. I am looking forward to the 3rd one, and I believe that's the final one in the series, and it's going to be about the other 2 friends, so it's 3 guys and 3 girls. And yeah, that's that. The one element that I really liked in this, because they have to come together to organize their friend's wedding, there's apparently a wedding saboteur out that's trying to make sure this wedding doesn't happen. So it added a nice element of drama in it and a bit of an element of a mystery, and I really appreciated that because I like books that have not just romance but also a little bit more than that, and this was pretty good. Alright, after that I read The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra by Vaseem Khan. This is a book that I randomly came across on Goodreads. I hadn't heard much about it and actually really enjoyed it. It's a series, so as you can imagine, this is a bit of a murder mystery, a thriller, but I would classify this as a cozy mystery. So it follows our main character, Detective Chopra, who is in the police force in Mumbai, in India, and it starts off on the day of his retirement. So the day that he's retiring, a murder case comes through, and he also receives a baby elephant. So it's an unexpected inheritance. He receives a baby elephant from his uncle, and so he has these like 2 like simultaneous like mysteries that he's trying to solve, and it's very fun. It's not gory and as intense as like other murder mysteries can be, which is why I would classify this as a cozy mystery. It has a very lovable baby elephant in it. I thought that was adorable. And it has like some really, really fun characters. I really enjoyed his wife's character as well, Poppy. I would love to hear and read more on her in the future, but The book is about him, despite being retired, now solving this mystery. If you are looking for an entry-level book into like South Asian authors or South Asian stories, I think this would be a great one because it's not so heavy on cultural commentary or historical commentary, so you don't necessarily need to know too much to be able to read it, while at the same time it's a really nice introduction to like the setting and a really nice introduction to the culture. And I thought it was great. I am going to be starting the next one in the series. It's about the Kohinoor or the jewels being stolen when they come for a tour to India, like the royal jewels from England. So I'm excited about that one. I gave this a 3.75 stars and not a 4-star, only because I thought at some points it felt like a tiny bit of a drag for me personally, but it's not a complaint that other people have had online. But it was still really great. And a 3.75 rating in my books is actually really high. Four stars is like, that book was amazing. I only give 5 stars to the books that really feel life-changing, like Yellowface. After that, because it is September, I have been in a mood to read more witchy books and fall-themed books. And so I read The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I have had this book for months on my Kobo, but I was saving it for this time of the year, and you know what, I'm so happy I did because it was so fun. I gave this book 4 stars for a number of reasons. So it is a small town romance, and because it's a witchy romance, like it's not too heavy on magic or anything, so it is primarily a romance, but it has elements of magic and mystery and mysticism. But it's basically about Vivienne Jones, who is a 19-year-old witch at the beginning of the book, and she has this breakup with this guy, Reese, who's also our main character, our male protagonist. And, you know, she's 19, her heart's been broken, so she goes home, and with her cousin Gwen, they think it would be a good joke if they were to place a hex on him, but they don't expect it to really work, which I'm not sure why, because they both knew that they were witches. Anyway, so they decide to place a hex on him. They think nothing really happens, and then the book gets fast forward 10 years, and these two characters come back together. So again, a small town element for sure. I guess you could say a bit of enemies to lovers, and I think just the perfect amount of magic and witchiness in it. So it's not magic in the sense where it's like a fantasy that you're reading. It's a romance. It's a fun rom-com with just the right bits and pieces of a little something to make it so fall appropriate. It was a little bit spicy, but definitely nothing like terrible. So if that's something that is important to you, keep that in mind. And because I have been in the mood for witchy romances, I decided to pick up Enchanted to Meet You by Meg Cabot. This is also new, and I was just so drawn to this. Look at the cover. I thought it was beautiful. And this is essentially about our main character, Jessica Gold, who is in a small town, and she basically gets approached by this like male witch who tells her that she's the chosen one to save the town. Now, I thought this book was alright. I gave it a 2.5 stars, and I felt so bad because I don't give a rating that low, but I didn't love this book for a number of reasons. I think it definitely did have like the right amount of like witchiness, and it had all the rom-com elements, but I felt like it had so much going on that necessarily didn't need to be there, and I didn't feel in love with any of the characters. Also, it was like almost 400 pages, and I don't know if... I don't like it when rom-coms get so dragged out, where they're 350 pages. To me, that is not the perfect size for me. I prefer shorter rom-coms, but just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that you shouldn't read it or that it's a bad book. Definitely make your own decisions, but this unfortunately just didn't do it for me, sadly, especially after reading The Ex-Hex. All right, the next book that I read was much better and that put me in a good mood. And next up, I read My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. I gave this 4 stars. I'm not sure why people are hating on this on Goodreads because it was so fun. So this is essentially about our main protagonist, Cassie Greenberg, and our male protagonist, Frederick Fitzwilliam. And it's basically Cassie's looking for a place to live. She's a bit of a broke artist, so she needs a cheap place to live, and a listing pops up for this really big place in Chicago for really, really cheap. So she decides to check it out because there are some weird things in the listing. Like the roommate says, you know, he doesn't like ever come out during the day. He only comes out at night, type of a thing. So she takes the lease, and slowly she starts to kind of discover that there's something weird going on. And turns out her roommate is a vampire. And if you were thinking Twilight vibes, please do not think that, because this could not be farther from Twilight. This is a really, really fun rom-com. There isn't too much like vampire-ness either. I actually really enjoyed Frederick, the vampire. He was just so different from how we have seen vampires before. Like, he's not like aloof and mysterious like Edward, or detached, and not like the vampires that we saw in like True Blood and things like that. It was just so lovable. He was so golden retriever energy almost, and I really liked it. I just thought it was fun. Like, there's not like much to it, not much more to it. It's just a fun rom-com that's gonna put you in the mood for fall and for Halloween. So if you're looking for a book that like screams Halloween and screams fall, this would be a really, really good contender. All right, after that we have A Most Agreeable Murder by Julia Seals. I started this way long ago in the summer, but I finally finished it in September. I kind of got bored of it a little bit in the middle, so I put it down, but all in all, it ended up being a good book. This is the one I gave this 3 stars. So this is essentially a satirical comedic spin on Regency era romances and mysteries. So if you like the books that are, you know, set in 1800s in England, where there's like a lot of courting, like Bridgerton types of books, but then also murder mysteries from that era, you would like this. It's a pretty funny comedy of that type of a setting and that genre, and I thought it was pretty good. So it basically follows Beatrice Steele. She is a young woman living in a small town called Swampshire in England, and the whole book takes place during one night, during one dinner party where somebody gets murdered, and she takes it upon herself to solve the murder. It has all the tropes that books from this genre have. So, you know, you've got like old female protagonist, because 25 at that time was considered pretty much like you're a spinster, and you've got a detective, you've got a big house, a big estate, a country estate. You've got people trapped in the estate, nobody can leave type of a situation. You've got this like mockery of class limitations. So, you know, nobody can marry outside their class, and it's really important how they present themselves and keep up appearances. So all those tiny tropes that are present in books from this genre are in this, and the author really tries to put a comedic spin on them and make them funny. I personally did not have many moments where I was really laughing out loud, but I definitely chuckled in a few places, and I thought it was good. I actually haven't read any other book because I love this genre. I love reading books set in this time that are murder mysteries or that are romances, and I haven't read any satires that make fun of this era and this genre. So this was a pretty good book to pick up. It will also certainly put you in the mood for fall because the atmosphere and the setting is very dark and mysterious, but with also lots of comedic elements. Right, unfortunately we have 2 DNFs in this month, and the first one being The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. This is a summer thriller, so like a murder mystery thriller that's set in Italy in a villa in the summer. Sounds really nice, right? Unfortunately for me, it just didn't do it. I love Rachel Hawkins. I have some of her other books. I love everything that she writes. I think she's a brilliant writer, but this book just did not do it for me. I read about 38-39%, and I decided to DNF it because to me it felt like nothing really was happening. But it's essentially about 2 friends who are writers, and they decide to rent this villa in Italy for the summer for a month. And it's a bit of a writing retreat, but there is a dark past to this house. So you have a bit of time jumps as well, and perspectives of this woman who used to live there before. And it is definitely a little creepy and eerie, but it wasn't moving for me, the story. It just felt like we were 40% through and not much has happened. So unfortunately, I was not a fan. And the second DNF is Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. I feel so bad DNFing books, but please know that it doesn't mean that they're bad or that you shouldn't read them. It's just, for me, they just didn't feel like right. And this one certainly didn't. Again, I read it about 38%, 39%, and I was just not feeling the chemistry between the two main characters. I was not invested in either of them, and I just didn't find myself loving the female character. I felt a little bit like not caring and detached. I felt that the characterization wasn't up to par for me. But again, give it a fair shot yourself. But the premise sounds really interesting for this one. So this follows Phoebe Walsh, who is a PhD student, and she's doing her PhD on true crime. So she's obsessed with like true crime and cold cases and all of that, and that really reeled me in. I thought that was a really cool character that we haven't really seen much. Because, you know, in romances we see like starving artists and all of that, but this just felt like a PhD student in true crime, felt really refreshing. And a neighbor moves in next door who she suspects of being a serial killer. Kind of makes sense when this is all that she thinks about and it's her bread and butter. And I'm assuming by the end of the book they figure out that he's not a serial killer because the romance is between the two of them. And yeah, sounds really interesting, and that's why I picked it up, and maybe I will come back to it in the future. But again, almost halfway through, and it felt like not much had happened and there just wasn't any chemistry building between the two. So unfortunately, it was not it for me. The book that I read after was actually really good, and that was The Therapist by B.A. Paris. I've had this on my shelf forever, but again, was waiting for this season to pick it up. And it's quite nice. I did a whole reading vlog where I was reading this, and I will have it linked up here as well as down below if you want to check it out. But it was actually pretty fast. It is 360 pages, but if you have read anything by B.A. Paris, it's very straightforward, very succinct, very, very fast. There isn't jumps in timelines. There isn't multi-perspective. There's multi-perspective, but very, very little. So it almost doesn't feel like a multi-perspective story. It's really just one main character that's telling the story. This is basically about this couple, Alice and Leo. They move into a really nice house outside of London in a gated community. So it's very posh vibes, elevated vibes. And turns out that something really bad happened in that house with the previous owners. And Alice, when she discovers it, she finds herself becoming really obsessed with figuring out what happened to that person who was actually a therapist. And she starts to figure out this like murder and what happened. So it's definitely like that domestic thriller. It involves like a lot of lying, a lot of neighbors, there's a lot of secrecy, and I thought it was actually well done. I had a really good time reading it. It's a standard but still really good thriller for this season. I'm not going to tell you more because then it will get ruined if I were to say more, but if you're looking for a quick thriller, something that you can probably read in a weekend, or yeah, like a weekend away, or on a really long road trip or long flight, this would be a really good contender for that. Whew, bear with me. I read a lot this month. After that, I read What a Happy Family by Samia Dave, and I was looking forward to this one. So I was just in the mood. So after reading all these fall witchy books and that thriller, I needed something that had nothing to do with fall, just to kind of clear my headspace a little bit. So I picked this up. This is really like a family drama that follows this family, Joshi family, that's an Indian American family, and it follows like the multiple characters and family members. So you've got 3 kids and 2 parents, and they live in Atlanta, Georgia, and there's a lot of obviously cultural commentary. Samia Dave is really good at that, but basically the book starts off with a scandal, like a family scandal happening, and everything just unravels from there. You get perspectives from each of the characters. So you have, you know, the eldest daughter who is very like type A and high achieving. Then you've got a son who we didn't actually see much of, and then you have another daughter who is the problem. We also hear a lot from the parents, the Indian immigrant parents, and their perspective. I really like Soumya Dev's ability to really like flesh things out, and like she's very nuanced with explaining people's psyche and how family dynamics work in big Indian families, and she's very, very good at that. My one qualm with this book was it almost felt too convenient. I think it had a lot more potential for a lot more messy drama that actually comes with brown families and with South Asian families. But this almost felt like too convenient, that okay, there was an issue, oh, but then they talked about it and now they're okay. I don't know. I mean, families like that obviously do exist, but in that sense, the book fell a little bit flat for me. But again, if you're looking for a good entry into South Asian author or South Asian story or South Asian perspectives, this is a really, really great book for that, because like I said, Soumya Dev has a really great ability to be very nuanced in how she portrays and unravels a lot of these issues and family dynamics that we see in Desi families. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. And the last book that I read in the month of September was The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. This is a sequel to The Ex-Hex. And I actually finished it last night or the day before. It is September 29th when I'm filming this, so we still have a couple days left in the month. I may finish another book, but this is the last one that I've read until now. And it, as is usual with so many series, the second one was not as good as the first one, in my opinion, but it was still good and it was still fun. I still gave it 4 stars, but I will still say that the Ex-Hex was much better. So The Kiss Curse is now about Vivi's sister Gwen and Reese's brother Wells. So the 2 main characters from the Ex-Hex, it's their siblings in this book who now get together. I like that in a sense. I know some people find that too convenient and they don't like it, but I like that. Again, it's small town setting, so it's in that small town Graves Glen in which the first book took place. But the characters are really quite different. So in the Ex-Hex, where maybe the male protagonist was more, I guess, sunshine and puppy energy, in this one you definitely have more of a aloof, cold, seemingly cold, grumpy type of a main male character. So the energy was a little bit different. This one was not so heavy on the magic, I will say. The first one, Ex-Hex, was a little bit heavier. Like the plot had more to do with magic than this one, but it was still fun. But basically what happens is, because it's a bit of an enemies to lovers romance, but Gwen hates this guy Wells because she has many reasons, but basically he didn't come to the wedding of her sister and now her brother-in-law, and so she doesn't really like him. So he finds himself coming to Graves Glen. He decides to move there from Wales, and he opens a shop across from hers that sells the same stuff that she does. So you can see why they're enemies, and because he's her competition. And that's where their story starts, and they develop this like a really fun competitive relationship that soon turns into romance. There is something that goes wrong, of course, like with this magical piece and element, but I'm not gonna say what it is, obviously that would be a spoiler. But it was fun. It was fun. It was a little bit too convenient at the end, in my opinion, but I still enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. I feel like with these types of seasonal books, I'm not looking to read anything that's going to be life-changing and groundbreaking and change my perspective on how I think. I'm looking for a good time, and this book was certainly it. All right, that was a lot of books. That was all the books that I read in the month of September. If there's any of these that really resonated with you, that you are looking forward to reading or you have already read, let me know below. I would be curious to hearing about your thoughts. And if you like this, definitely, if you like this video, check out my next one where I am talking a little bit more about The Therapist and What a Happy Family, a little bit more in detail. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, and I'll see you in my next one.